Trust is a fragile thread, easily snapped by those closest to you. This story dives into a son's battle against lies, fighting to reclaim his name from the ruins of betrayal. My name is Lucas, 33, living in Miami, where the air is thick with salt and heat, but some wounds cut deeper than the sun's burn. I ran Rosa's Pastries, our family's bakery, alongside my parents. It's a small shop, its windows steamed with the scent of guava empanadas, Cuban coffee, and warm conscious. For 20 years, it's been our heartbeat. Mom kneading dough at dawn, Dad joking with regulars, me balancing the books. It was my home, my pride, until Javier, my best friend, ripped it apart. Javier and I were inseparable since we were kids. At 10, we'd race skateboards down 8th Street, dodging tourists. At 16, we'd pool our cash for gas to cruise South Beach, dreaming of big futures. He was my brother, not by blood but by choice. When I took over managing the bakery after college, Javier was there. No question, he'd haul flour bags, flirt with abuelas to sell extra pastelitos, even memorize Mom's recipe for tres leches. My parents treated him like family. Javier's got a spark, Mom would say, her eyes soft. Dad handed him the safe's code, a trust he barely gave me. I wasn't flawless in my early 20s. I was a mess, racked up $15,000 in credit card debt chasing dumb dreams, like a flashy watch or a motorcycle I crashed twice. I paid it off, took accounting classes, but my parents' trust never recovered. They'd hover when I counted the till, their sighs heavy with doubt. Javier? He was their rock, the son who didn't screw up. It stung, but I swallowed it, thinking we were a team. Then the numbers started slipping. First, it was $50 missing from a day's sales. I chalked it up to my rusty math, staying late to triple-check receipts under the flicker of the office's old lamp. The air smelled of yeast and regret. Soon, it was $200, then $600. My gut twisted. I knew I hadn't touched the cash, but doubt crept in. Was I slipping again? I confided in Javier, expecting my best friend to help. He just shrugged, said, "You'll figure it out, man." Then came the hammer. Dad called me to the back one humid afternoon, his face like granite. "Lucas, we're missing $12,000. Explain this." My throat went dry. I stammered. "I didn't." But Mom cut in, her voice trembling. "We trusted you with everything. Lucas, how could you do this to us?" Javier stood there, arms crossed, showing them proof, bank statements, withdrawal slips, all doctored to point at me. I didn't know then, but he'd been skimming for months, rigging the books to frame me. My best friend, the guy I'd shared my life with, had turned me into the villain. That night, I couldn't sleep. The bakery's familiar hum, ovens clicking, coffee brewing, felt like a ghost. I saw Javier's grin as he hugged Mom, his easy chats with Dad about old Cuban music. Was it all a lie? My parents' eyes, sharp with disappointment, burned worse than the betrayal. They'd chosen him over me, their own son. I lay in bed, the ceiling fans droned mocking my racing thoughts. I had to find the truth. I started pulling bank records, timestamps, anything to prove I wasn't the thief. The bakery was my legacy, but more than that, it was my family, and I wasn't ready to lose either, no matter how much it hurt. I sat in my apartment, the glow of my laptop cutting through the dark. It was 2 a.m., and Miami's nightlife hummed outside. But I was glued to bank statements, my coffee cold. The bakery's accounts were a mess. Numbers I'd trusted Javier to double-check were now my only shot at proving I wasn't a thief. Every line I scanned felt like a punch. Withdrawals I didn't make, transfers I didn't authorize. My parents' words echoed, "How could you, Lucas?" And each one tightened the knot in my chest. I kept replaying that day in the bakery, Dad's clenched jaw, Mom's trembling hands as she clutched a stack of forged receipts Javier handed her. He'd stood there, eyes down, playing the loyal friend caught in an awkward spot. "I didn't want to believe it either," he'd said. Voice soft, I trusted him with everything, my secrets, my fears, even the code to the bakery safe. Now, those memories felt like traps. Had he planned this all along? The guy who'd crashed on my couch, who'd toasted my 30th birthday with cheap rum, who'd promised we'd make the bakery a chain someday, was he always the snake? I started cross-referencing dates, A $500 withdrawal matched today. I was out sick, stuck in bed with a fever. Another $1,200 when I was at a vendor meeting across town. I found a pattern, small amounts at first, then bigger, always when I wasn't around. Javier had access to the accounts, same as me. He'd log in after hours, move cash, then tweak the books to make it look like my screw up. I dug deeper, pulling security footage from the bakery's ancient cameras. There he was, 1:43 a.m., at the office computer, his face lit by the screen. My stomach churned. This wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. Confronting my parents was harder. I went to the bakery the next morning, the bell jingling like a bad omen. Mom was icing cupcakes, her back to me. Dad was at the counter, silent. I laid out the evidence, printouts, timestamps. A grainy still of Javier. This proves it wasn't me, I said, voice shaking. Dad barely glanced at the papers. You're good with computers, Lucas. You could have faked this. Mom didn't look up, just kept piping frosting, her silence louder than any accusation. They'd raised me, loved me. But one whisper from Javier, and I was the outsider. I tried talking to Javier next. I called, texted, even showed up at his place. He opened the door, all casual, like nothing was wrong. What's up, man? He said, leaning against the frame. I held up the security still. His face didn't change, but his eyes flickered. You're gonna believe a blurry picture over me, he said, laughing. Or family, Lucas? I'd never do you like that. But his voice had an edge, and when I pressed him about the withdrawals, he shut the door in my face. Back home, I felt like I was drowning. The bakery wasn't just a job, it was my parents' legacy, my future. I'd spent years proving I wasn't the screw-up they thought, but Javier's lies had undone it all. I thought about quitting, walking away, letting him have it. But then I'd see Mom's hands kneading dough, Dad's proud grin when a customer raved about our conscious. I couldn't lose that. I kept digging, pulling every record I could access. There had to be a smoking gun, something my parents couldn't ignore. But the deeper I went, the more I wondered, if I proved Javier's guilt, would they ever trust me again? Or was that gone forever, no matter what I found? Days bled into weeks, and I was still chasing ghosts and bank records. My apartment was a war zone, papers strewn across the table, coffee mugs piling up, my laptop humming through endless nights, Miami's heat pressed against the windows. But I felt cold, hollowed out by Javier's betrayal and my parents' refusal to see the truth. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mom's hands trembling as she accused me, Dad's stone-cold stare, Javier's smirk as he shut his door. I was fighting for roses, pastries for my family, but it felt like I was fighting alone. I started calling the bank, piecing together transactions. A clerk named Maria helped me, her voice patient as I stumbled through account numbers. I found a trail, transfers to an account I didn't recognize, opened in my name but linked to Javier's email. He'd used my old ID from a time I'd lost my wallet, back when we were dumb kids sharing everything. He'd forged my signature, siphoned $12,000 over 6 months, and made it look like I was the thief. The evidence was ironclad, but my heart sank. This wasn't just about money, it was personal. He'd weaponized our friendship. I went to the bakery, armed with printouts and a USB of bank correspondence. The smell of fresh bread hit me like a memory, but the warmth was gone. Mom was at the counter, her smile for customers fading when she saw me. Dad was in the back. Checking inventory, I laid everything out, emails, account logs, timestamps. Javier did this, I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. He set me up. Dad skimmed the papers, then pushed them back. This doesn't prove anything, Lucas. You've always been careless. Mom looked away, wiping her hands on her apron. We can't afford more mistakes, she whispered. Their words cut deeper than I expected. I'd spent years rebuilding their trust, working overtime, learning the business inside out. But one lie from Javier, and I was back to being the reckless kid who'd crashed a motorcycle. I wanted to scream, to shake them until they saw me. Instead, I left, the bell above the door jingling like a goodbye. I tracked Javier down at a bar he liked, the kind with sticky floors and neon signs. He was laughing with some guys, a beer in hand, like he hadn't torched my life. I slid into the booth across from him, the bank records in my bag. I know what you did, I said, keeping my voice low. His smile didn't falter, but his eyes went cold. You're obsessed, man. Let it go. I showed him the account logs, the forged ID. For a second, he froze, then leaned back. You really think your parents will believe you over me? They know who you are, Lucas. That hit harder than I'd admit. He knew my weak spots, my past mistakes, my parents' doubts. He'd played them perfectly, and now he was betting I'd give up. I stood, my hands shaking. This isn't over, I said, and walked out. His laughter trailing anchoring to my side was like walking through a storm. The bakery, my family, my name, they were slipping through my fingers, and I was running out of time to grab them back. I spent the next day calling Maria at the bank again, digging for more proof. Anything to make my parents see the truth, but Javier's words gnawed at me. Would they ever choose me over him? Or was I fighting for a trust that was already gone? The days were blurring now, each one a grind of coffee and desperation. My apartment smelled like stale takeout, papers carpeting every surface as I hunted for the final piece to nail Javier. Rose's pastries felt like a distant memory, its warmth replaced by a gnawing ache. I'd walk by the bakery some nights, seeing the glow of its sign, hearing the faint clatter of pans, but I couldn't go in, not after Mom's averted eyes, Dad's curt dismissal. They'd made their choice, and it wasn't me. I kept working with Maria from the bank, who was starting to feel like my only ally. She found a transaction that broke the pattern, a $5,000 transfer to an account tied to Javier's cousin. Not me. It was sloppy, a crack in his scheme. This could be enough, Maria said, emailing me the records. My hands shook as I printed them, the paper feeling like a lifeline. But doubt crept in. Would my parents even care? They looked at my last evidence like it was a kid's drawing, not proof their second son was a liar. I started tailing Javier, not proud of it but past caring. I'd park near his place, watching him leave for the bakery or meet shady guys at a diner. One night, I saw him hand an envelope to a dude in a hoodie, cash peeking out. I snapped a photo with my phone. Heart pounding, it wasn't much, but it was something. I felt like a detective in a bad movie, except this was my life, and the stakes were my family. I tried my parents again, this time at their house. The smell of Mom's arroz con pollo hit me as I walked in, a punch of nostalgia. They sat at the kitchen table, tired lines etched deeper in their faces. I spread out the new evidence, Maria's email, the cousin's account, the diner photo, Javier's stealing from you. I said, my voice cracking, he's using my name to do it. Dad's eyes flicked to the papers, then back to me. You're digging too deep. Lucas, let it go. Mom reached for my hand, but stopped short. We just want the bakery to be okay, she said softly. Their doubt was a knife, twisting. I'd spent my life in that bakery, scraped knees on its floors as a kid, burned my hands learning to bake, poured my heart into making it thrive. Now, I was the enemy, and Javier was still their golden boy. I left their house. The doors clicked behind me, sounding final. I drove aimlessly, Miami's neon lights blurring through my tears. Javier's words from the bar echoed. They know who you are. Maybe he was right. Maybe I'd always be the screw-up to them. But giving up wasn't in me. I went back to the bank records, cross-checking every transaction. I found another slip. Javier had used the bakery's credit line to pay off a personal loan, buried in a mess of fake invoices. It was bold, reckless, and exactly what I needed. I compiled everything, emails, photos, bank logs, into a folder, my hands steady now. I wasn't just fighting for the bakery anymore. I was fighting for me, for the truth. I texted Javier, meet me tomorrow. We're done playing. He didn't reply, but I knew he'd show. He had to. As I lay in bed, the ceiling fan's hum was the only sound. I thought of Mom's laugh when I'd sneak a pastry as a kid, Dad's proud nod when I closed my first big order. Could I get that back? Or was I chasing a family that didn't exist anymore? All I knew was I had to face Javier one last time and make him answer for what he'd done. The diner smelled of burnt coffee and grease, its neon sign flickering outside. I sat in a corner booth, my folder of evidence, bank logs, photos, fake invoices spread out like a battle plan. Javier walked in, all swagger, his eyes scanning the room before landing on me. He slid into the booth, smirking. This your big moment, Lucas? He said, leaning back. My chest tightened, but I kept my voice steady. You stole from my family. I've got proof. I pushed the folder toward him, watching his face. For a split second, his smirk faltered, eyes flicking to the papers, the transfer to his cousin's account, the bakery's credit line abuse. The diner photo of him handing off cash, it was all there. You think this means anything? He said, voice low. Your parents don't trust you. Never have. His words hit like a slap. But I leaned in. Why, Javier? We were brothers. He looked away, jaw tight, and for a moment, I saw the kid I'd grown up with laughing over skateboards, sharing dreams, then it was gone. I needed the money, he finally said, shrugging like it was nothing. You were an easy scapegoat. Your folks already thought you'd screw up. My hands clenched under the table. He'd used my past, my mistakes, to bury me. You could have asked me, I said, voice breaking. I'd have helped you. He laughed, sharp and cold. You? The guy who burned through thousands on a bike? Nah, I took care of myself. He stood, tossing a crumpled bill on the table. Good luck with your parents, man. You're gonna need it. I sat there, stunned. As he walked out, the diner's hum faded, replaced by memories. Javier helping me fix my bike at 15, toasting my first big sale at the bakery. All lies? I wanted to hate him, but part of me still ached for the friend I'd lost. I gathered the papers, my resolve hardening. He wasn't getting away with this. I went to the bakery that evening. The bells jingle a hollow echo. Mom was cleaning the counter, Dad restocking flour. They barely looked up. I laid out the folder, my voice firm. Javier admitted it. He stole the money, used my name. Here's everything. Bank records, his cousin's account, photos. Dad's eyes lingered on the papers this time, his brow furrowing. Mom paused, her rag still. He said that. She asked, voice small. I nodded, my throat tight. He used me, and you let him. Dad picked up the photo, his hand shaking slightly. This doesn't look good for him, he admitted. But his eyes still held doubt. Mom touched my arm. The first time in weeks. Lucas, we didn't know. It wasn't an apology, not really, but it was something. I wanted to hug her, to scream, to cry. Instead, I said, I'm not the one you should question. I left, the weight of their hesitation crushing me. Back home, I stared at the ceiling. The fans hum my only company. Javier's confession should have felt like a win, but it didn't. My parents' trust was still a ghost, slipping through my fingers. I thought of the bakery, its sticky floors, the oven's warmth. The customers who felt like family. Could I save it? I kept digging, emailing Maria for more bank records, checking security footage for anything I'd missed. Javier wasn't done with me. I knew that. He'd fight dirty to keep his place in my parents' eyes, but I wasn't the kid who'd crashed a motorcycle anymore. I was fighting for my name, my home, and I'd be damned if I let him take it. Javier's confession in the diner should have been my turning point, but it felt like a half-win. Tainted by my parents' hesitation, I was back in my apartment, the air heavy with Miami's humidity, my desk buried under papers and empty coffee cups. The folder of evidence, bank records, photos, forged invoices was growing, but so was my exhaustion. Every night, I'd see Rose's pastries in my dreams, its ovens glowing, Mom's laughter, Dad's gruff praise. Waking up to reality, where I was still the outcast, was like losing it all over again. I doubled down, calling Maria at the bank daily. She'd become my lifeline. Her calm voice grounding me as we traced more transactions. We found another $3,000 funneled to Javier's cousin, buried in a fake vendor payment. I got the vendor on the phone, a confused guy who swore he hadn't been paid by us in months. It was another nail in Javier's coffin. But I needed more. I hacked into the bakery's old email system. Javier hadn't changed the password we'd shared. There. I found messages he'd sent. To himself, attaching altered receipts to cover his tracks. Sloppy, but bold, he'd banked on my parents' doubt in me. I went to the bakery at dawn, before the morning rush. The smell of fresh dough hit me, a pang of home I wasn't sure I'd ever reclaim. Dad was unloading flour sacks, Mom prepping the coffee machine. I didn't waste time. Javier's been lying, I said. Spreading out the new evidence, vendor call logs, email screenshots, Maria's latest bank records. He's stealing, and he's using me to do it. Dad's hand stilled on his sack, his eyes scanning the papers. Mom's face crumpled, like she was seeing Javier for the first time. He wouldn't, she whispered, but it lacked conviction. Dad finally spoke, voice low. If this is true, Lucas, why didn't you catch it sooner? The question stung worse than an accusation. He wasn't wrong. I'd trusted Javier, let him handle the books too often. My past mistakes, the debt, the motorcycle, hung over me like a shadow. I trusted him, I said, my voice raw. Like you did. Mom reached for me, then stopped, her hand hovering. We need to talk to him, she said. It wasn't belief, not yet, but it was a crack in their wall. I confronted Javier again, this time at his apartment. He opened the door, eyes wary, no smirk. You don't quit, do you? He said, letting me in. His place was a mess, takeout boxes, unwashed dishes, like he was unraveling too. I showed him the emails. The vendor logs. It's over, Javier, confess, or I take this to the police. His laugh was bitter. You destroy your parents' business over this? They'll hate you more. He was right. The bakery was fragile, and a scandal could kill it. But I wasn't backing down. Tell them, or I will, I said, walking out. That night, I sat alone. The ceiling fans hummed, my only companion. I thought of the bakery's sticky counters, the regulars who'd call me Mijo, the pride in Dad's eyes when I'd nailed a recipe. Javier had stolen more than money out. He'd taken my place in that world. I wanted to believe my parents would see the truth, but their doubt lingered like a bruise. I kept gathering evidence, emailing Maria for one last transaction record. If Javier wouldn't confess, I'd make sure the truth was undeniable. But as I worked, a question gnawed at me. Even if I won, would my family ever look at me the same? I was running on fumes, my apartment a chaos of papers and desperation. Miami's sun blazed outside, but I was trapped in the dark, piecing together the final threads to bury Javier's lies. Rose's pastries felt like a ghost now, its warmth replaced by the cold weight of my parents' doubt. Every memory, Mom's hand shaping dough, Dad's rare smile when I'd perfected a flan, cut deeper, reminding me what I was fighting for. I couldn't let Javier take it all. Maria from the bank came through with a final piece, a security deposit box in Javier's name, funded by bakery transfers. It was the smoking gun, $8,000 stashed away, linked to the forged account in my name. I compiled everything. Bank logs, vendor call records, hacked emails, the diner photo, and now this. My hand shook as I organized the folder, not from fear but from the weight of what came next. I had to face my parents, make them see the truth, even if it broke us. I went to the bakery at closing, the air thick with sugar and silence. Mom was sweeping, Dad locking the safe. The bell's jingle felt like a warning. I laid out the evidence on the counter, my voice steady despite the knot in my throat. Javier's been stealing. This proves it. Deposit box, transfers, emails, all in his name. I pointed to the bank statement, the $8,000 glaring. Dad's eyes lingered on it, his jaw tight. Mom's broom stopped, her face pale. He wouldn't, she said, but her voice cracked. Dad picked up the deposit box record, his hands unsteady. This is real? He asked, looking at me for the first time in weeks. I nodded. He admitted it to me. Dad, he used my past to make you doubt me. Mom's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't move. We trusted him. Lucas, she whispered. And you? She didn't finish, but the unspoken hurt worse. They'd trusted him over me, their own son. I called Javier to the bakery that night. He showed up, all bravado, but his eyes darted to the folder. What's this? Lucas? Another witch hunt. I didn't flinch. It's over. Tell them, or I go to the police. His face hardened, but Dad cut in, voice like steel. Is it true, Javier? For the first time, Javier faltered, his charm cracking. It was a loan, he stammered. I was gonna pay it back. Mom gasped, hand to her mouth. Dad stepped closer. You framed my son. It wasn't a question. Javier tried to spin it, but the evidence was a wall he couldn't climb. He left, muttering threats, his shadow lingering like poison. Dad turned to me, his face unreadable. You should have caught this, Lucas. It wasn't the apology I'd hoped for, but it was acknowledgement. Mom hugged me, her sobs muffled against my shoulder, but it felt fragile, like it could break any second. That night, alone, I stared at the ceiling, the fans hum of faint comfort. Javier was gone, the truth laid bare, but the victory tasted bitter. My parents knew I wasn't the thief, but their doubt had left scars. I thought of the bakery's sticky tables, the regular smiles, the life I'd poured into it. Could I go back? I had the evidence, the truth, but trust was a ghost. I lay awake, wondering if I'd won the battle but lost the family I'd fought for. Javier's betrayal was clear, but the real fight, earning my parents' faith, wasn't over. Javier was gone, his lies exposed. But the bakery felt like a hollow shell. I stood behind the counter at Rosa's Pastries, the scent of guava and coffee no longer home, just a reminder of what I'd fought for and lost. Miami's sun streamed through the windows, but the warmth couldn't touch the ache in my chest. My parents knew the truth now: bank records, emails, Javier's half-assed confession, but their trust in me was still fractured, a cracked glass that might never mend. I took over the bakery's operations alone. Dad stayed in the back, handling inventory, his gruff voice quieter now. Mom baked, her hands steady but her eyes avoiding mine. They'd fired Javier, but no one talked about it. The regulars noticed, asking where that nice boy went, and I'd force a smile, muttering something about him moving on. I restocked the shelves, fixed the books, and paid back the $12,000 from my savings, every dollar a stab at proving I wasn't the screw-up they thought. But their silence said it all. They still saw my past mistakes, not the son who'd saved their legacy. I worked on to midnight, teaching myself accounting software, streamlining orders, even tweaking Mom's recipes to cut costs. The bakery started turning a profit again. Slowly, customers came back, drawn by new specials, a mango conchas, a café con leche deal. I'd hear their laughter, see their smiles, and for a moment, I'd feel like I belonged. But then I'd catch Dad's glance, heavy with unspoken doubt, or Mom's hesitant pat on my shoulder, and the weight would return. I'd won the fight, but not their faith. One night, I found an old photo tucked in a drawer, me and Javier, 16, grinning outside the bakery with ice cream dripping down our shirts. I wanted to tear it up, to erase him, but I couldn't. He'd been my brother, my partner in dreams of making roses a chain. His betrayal wasn't just about money. He'd stolen my place in my family's heart. I sat there, the fans' hum filling the silence, and realized I didn't need their approval anymore. I'd rebuilt the bakery. Not for them, but for me, for the kid who'd grown up on those sticky floors, who'd burned his hands learning to bake. I started setting boundaries. I told Mom and Dad I'd run the bakery, but I wouldn't beg for their trust. I proved I'm not a thief. I said one evening, the air thick with tension, "If that's not enough, that's on you." Dad's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Mom's eyes welled up, and she hugged me, whispering, "We're trying, Lucas." It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. I walked away feeling lighter, like I'd reclaimed a piece of myself. The bakery thrived, but I carried the scars. Trust, I learned, is fragile, like the crust of a perfect empanada. One wrong move, and it crumbles. Javier's lies taught me that truth is my only anchor, even when it hurts. I still see my parents' doubts sometimes, in a glance or a pause, but I don't let it define me. I'm Lucas, the guy who saved Rosa's Pastries, who fought for his name, and that's enough.